Well, here I am back out in the paddock cleaning up a few more trees that have come down, and I'd like to continue a little bit more with the discussion last time about Balaam and Balak. And you remember that Balak was the Moabite king who was terrified of the Israelite army that was coming towards him, and he knew he couldn't beat them by numbers or by ability because they were just too big and too strong. So he called on Balaam the false prophet, who was a soothsayer and a diviner. So he tapped into all sorts of gods and spirits, and he called on that particular prophet to come and curse the Israelites for him. He thought maybe if he could curse them, he would be able to achieve some sort of victory in there with a cursing. So he's called on Balaam. That didn't work. Every time Balaam tried to curse the Israelites, then God spoke through Balaam and pronounced a blessing on them. So at the end of Numbers chapter 24 verses 25, this is a 3-chapter story, and it says Balaam got up and returned home. Now, so Balaam was done. It appeared to be. Balaam was in it for the money, in it for the prestige, in it for just what he could get, not doing anybody else any good. And it appears that he just couldn't do it because God turned all his words into blessings. But what happens next, we go straight into Numbers chapter 25, and we find that the Moabite women then seduced the the Israelite men, called the Israelites into their false worship and had immoral relationships with them. And if we go forward into Revelations 2:14, we find out a little bit more about what happened. And in Revelations 2:14, we find that the story was that Balaam told Balak told him to do just that, to send the Moabite women down amongst the men and to seduce them away from the one true God. So they all got involved in immorality. Probably Balaam, he's probably got his reward, I would guess. He's probably been paid for that advice. And we find that the Israelite men and then later the women got involved in immorality, and God sent a plague amongst them. And with what happened there, you read through Numbers 25, and 24,000 of them died. So it was a terrible thing to happen to the Israelites, but it does show how easily people can be led astray. And as Christian men and women, we also need to be very aware of the temptations of sexual immorality that got the Israelites at that time. We need to protect ourselves. And there's so much going on in this world which is against God's righteousness, and the habit of just recreational sex, sleep with who you like, homosexuality, pornography, all those things are a real temptation and a trap, and it's pushed everywhere in the media, it's on television, and we really have to be very careful. So one of the things I did when I was younger to try and guard against some of it was I used to memorise passages of scripture and then recite them to myself when I was struggling with different things, and I found that very effective. Nowadays we can jump onto YouTube and look up some godly advice there, or even short videos, and we really need to be guarding against the immorality in this culture. And partly that's why also God says that we should marry Christians. Christians should marry Christians, because we don't want to be marrying someone who's on the other team, who's just in it for worldly values. We need to be marrying someone who has got the same focus, which is on godly things, which is completely opposed to what the world is doing. So we'll just leave it at that. But just remember, Balaam eventually tricked he talked to Balak, and Balak tricked the Israelites into bringing God's judgment on themselves. And that type of immorality can really separate us from our one true God. So thank you for listening. Catch you next time.